Gaza to freely make a choice?
I was just watching the clip of the meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu at the White House. You know, the last time the two of them were together at the White House, President Trump talked about his plan to clean 2 million Palestinians out of Gaza. He even said he might use military force. And Prime Minister Netanyahu has embraced the idea of deporting millions of Palestinians out of Gaza. Now they've kind of cleaned up the language. They say, well, it would be voluntary. It's not voluntary when we're into 36 days of a humanitarian blockade of Gaza. It's not voluntary when Gaza is almost completely destroyed and your Defense Minister Katz, is threatening the civilian population of Gaza with destruction. And it's not voluntary when ambulances going to help wounded civilians are themselves attacked and everybody killed and the vehicles buried. So Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu can talk all they want about the voluntary movement of civilians out of Gaza. They're not fooling anybody. This is not voluntary. This is coerced deportation of 2 million Palestinians. That is illegal under international law. It's immoral, and the United States taxpayer should have nothing to do with it. Nothing.
Well, I don't know how much crap one man can actually say in a little tiny statement the way he just did, but yeah, we've got a lot of freaking business being over there right now, and we're going to go over that. We're going to actually talk because the U.S. military has been moving lots of hardware in quietly over the last, I don't know, 72 plus hours. And when I say hardware, I mean like flight after flight after flight after flight after flight of way more. And I mean way more freaking hardware than I've seen in the Middle East in a very, very long period of time. It's freaking kind of cool, also disturbing, kind of makes you wonder what's going to end up happening. Ladies and gentlemen, honestly, I don't know. I don't know how ridiculous this is going to turn out for the United States of America, but here's something that I do know. That if we don't do it, if we don't move in, we're going to have a hell of a lot bigger problems than just Gaza on our hands. That's for damn sure. It's freaking nuts. A little bit about here over in the homeland. It looks like the Supreme Court has affirmed Trump's ability to use the Alien Enemies Act in order to deport people. So that's good. So all the illegal aliens, we can deport them out underneath the Alien Enemies Act. How freaking rad is that? So they're going to go bye-byes. They're not going to be hanging out any longer. Good to see you all in the house. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I see Just Cause, C88. Dude, lots of you guys are jumping over in here this morning. I'm going to do a lot better job about staying up on time and making sure that I'm over in here for you guys so that it can be more reliable streaming times. I know I've been coming on a little bit late. I'm trying to get things around now. I want to bring this up because this next video clip, before we get into everything that's going on in the Middle East, this next video clip that I'm going to bring up kind of goes to show you how much BS is actually being peddled over inside of the Middle East and how much of that stuff is kind of bleeding over into America. I listened to like I don't know, probably about like a 30-minute video this morning of Bernie Sanders just running his mouth over in front of the Senate. And they're allowed to sit there and say these things. And people think just because you know, a senator says it or because a media outlet says it, that it must be true. And that's absolutely not the case. And that's our job over here on this channel, is to make sure that if people are putting out false information like you just saw in that other video, that you do your own due diligence. And I give you all the information for you to make your own conclusion. I want to see you guys be critical thinkers. Those of you who've been here for a while know that absolutely. Also, it looks like YouTube has possibly turned off notifications for everybody. I don't know, but make sure your notifications are turned on and make sure you've liked and subscribed to the channel. With that being said, let's get into this new clip. If you guys haven't seen this, this is coming out of Lebanon. You have the Lebanese media reporter right up there on the right. And then the person that he's interviewing, is actually the Deputy United States Special Envoy to the Middle East. So she's not a nobody. She knows a thing or two about what's taking place over there.
Lebanon rejects the formation of 3 diplomatic-led committees to address the issues of detainees, land border demarcation, and the withdrawal of the Israeli army. Does the United States still insist on this approach, despite Lebanon's position that the Israeli withdrawal and the detainee matters are not subject to negotiation?
Who is Lebanon? You said Lebanon rejects. Who rejects it?
The president and the prime minister.
The president hasn't rejected it to me.
That's what we heard from
I
them.
don't think that's accurate.
So again, it just kind of goes back down to the things that are being like thrown out there. And that's where she's asking like, well, who is it that's saying this crap? Because I happen to be the one that talks to that guy. And no, he didn't say that freaking crap. Oh, look at that. Yeah. So no YouTube announcement, just Discord. Well, that sucks. Well, it's a good thing for you guys that we're going live at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. That also makes sense why the video yesterday didn't get freaking pushed out like it normally does. I was kind of shocked to see that. But that's okay. This would be the second time in a row. Now, US CENTCOM ended up putting out this I don't even want to know how I say this, this press release, if you will, showing all of the aircraft being armed to go over and bomb the crap out of the Houthis. Now, take a look at all of these bombs that are lined up on this ship, right? Like you got a picture, like all of these bombs that they have, like that are up over here. These got to get there somehow. And we are tearing through them left and right, bombing the crap out of the Houthis. And this is just one little tiny campaign. That's it. This is just one little tiny campaign, just one. Right, against the Houthis. And what we're talking about, what you're going to see here in just a little bit, with all of the aircraft and stuff that's like currently being moved over to the Middle East. Yeah, JDM kits. You guys are super excited about this stuff, right? Wait for it. There you go. Yeah, that is just sexy. So with all of these, like, you know, aircraft taking off, doing these constant bombing campaigns and stuff like that over Yemen, all of this stuff needs to end up getting refitted. But more so when we talk about the B-2s that are over there, and we start talking about the B-1s and the freaking A-10s and all of the U.S. military troops, not to mention we're going to have 2 strike carrier groups now over in the Red Sea. Dude, that takes a lot of logistical support to make all of that stuff happen, particularly when we start talking about a long-term campaign. Stop. When we start talking about a long-term campaign that's definitely going to be taking place over inside of the Middle East. So how is all that stuff getting over there, and where the hell is it coming from? Well, it's coming from just a couple like tiny little places, as a matter of fact. Right over here, you can actually see 2 C-5s that ended up getting moved into the Middle East yesterday. And those C-5s ended up landing over at Diego Garcia. So this is just 2 C-5s that ended up landing over at Diego Garcia. This is 2. This is just 2. And out of these C-5s that are on their way over there, I want to give you an idea. I did a little bit of like quick beer math today to end up figuring this out. A C-5, for reference, it is the largest lift aircraft that the U.S. military has. Massive airplane. Massive, massive airplane. Huge. It's so big, it can fit 2 M1 Abrams tanks inside of it. So I want you to picture that. An Abrams tank, it can fit 2 into it. And it still has space left over, but just as far as lift capacity is left, I mean, it can lift 2 Abrams tanks. That's how big these damn things are. If you were to go by weight and load capacity of what these things can carry, 184 Mark 84s, 184 2,000-pound bombs. That thing can technically lift 184 2,000-pound bombs just in one of those aircraft. It is absolutely nuts. Now, whether or not you can configure it, I'm not a load master. I don't know whether or not you can configure it to carry that much, but that's a lot of freaking weight, dude. That is a buttload of weight. YouTube removed the Speak the Truth notifications, yet bombarded with advertisements. Go figure. That's a buttload of weight. Those are 2 very, very large aircraft that just went in. And those aren't the only ones that actually ended up going into the Middle East either. We've gotten reports of all sorts of crap that's like heading up over there. And when I say all sorts of crap, I mean all sorts of crap. Check this out while these are going on. Hold on. Woo! Sorry, that is so loud. C-17 Globemasters, C-5s, like all sorts of aircraft have been constantly rotating over there into the Middle East, and they're flying to all different sectors and all different areas, like preparing for everything that's yet to come. The reports about the Afghan airbase Bagram, like the old school Bagram airbase that we end up like giving over to the Taliban, the reports of that airbase now being under control of the United States government seems to be incorrect. I saw some overhead imagery earlier today that shows that there is no C-17s that ended up landing over there. Further, the spokesperson for the Afghan government actually came out and said, that that is an absolute false statement, that the U.S. government is not inside of Afghanistan. We are not at Bagram Airfield, that they are not going to allow it. That's absolutely false information. Sandsboy wants to know, is this a potential buildup for assault against Iran? That is an amazing question. And the answer to that question, in my opinion, is absolutely. Hell yes, this is a buildup for an assault against Iran. 100%. We are building up to assault Iran. And not just assault Iran, ladies and gentlemen. Not just Iran. But we're talking about all of the Iranian proxy organizations around the Middle East. Now, yesterday, some information came out that said that the Iranian proxy organizations inside of Iraq may be trying to disarm themselves before the U.S. government actually gets to them. New information actually came out today that said that they are not. All right, that they, as a matter of fact, are preparing for a fight and might actually launch a preemptive strike against U.S. forces over in the Middle East. And so while you have some false information, in my opinion, that's been put out, which is going to be they're going to disarm, because you got to think about it. Radical Islamist extremists. Look at what's taking place over inside Gaza. Same mentality, different theater. Same mentality, different theater. And even though they've had their poo-poo pushed in, they end up sticking through it. And these are the same organizations that are funded by Iran. Now, across the Middle East, check this out. Everything up there that you see in red is a U.S. military freaking airbase. Look at that. Those are all U.S. military air bases over inside of the Middle East. Just soak that up for a hot second. There's 2 green flags out here. These are just little U.S. military outposts. I think this one might be a little bit off, but that's okay. Intel Schizo actually did a pretty good job on this. And then our different naval ports that we had over there as well. Look at every single one of those. This is where the U.S. has the ability to project itself from across the Middle East. Now, Iran ended up putting out brand new warnings to all of our friendly nations over there, letting them know that, hey, if you let the United States government use that airspace, we're coming after you. Now, here's the problem. If we just go in and bomb Iran, which, by the way, to kind of bring you guys up to date on this, latest information is it's supposed to take place in Amman, Jordan. There's going to be peace talks between the Iranian government and the U.S. government. Trump said yesterday in his meeting with Netanyahu that there were going to be direct talks. It looks like they're going to be indirect talks. I don't know if Iran went back on their word, how they went over doing that. But Saturday, these talks are supposed to go down. And Trump said if the talks don't go well, or if Iran doesn't agree, it's going to be very, very bad for Iran. I think those were actually his exact words. Very, very bad for Iran. They're saying it's going down in Amman. Correct. On Saturday. So Saturday is when these peace talks are scheduled to go down. And I want to make it perfectly clear to everybody. Just because those peace talks are scheduled to go down on Saturday doesn't mean that the U.S. doesn't strike Iran before then. Because there's also word that Iran is preparing for, how do I want to say this, a preemptive strike against U.S. forces staged around the Middle East. And like I said, the word on the street yesterday over inside of Iraq was allegedly that they were going to be laying down their arms. All of the little militant groups would be laying down their arms. Today, the word on the street is that they're actually gearing up for war. And that actually makes more sense, and that sounds more like them. Iran absolutely doesn't want to give up its foothold in Iraq. And people who are confused by this, that look at this and think that this is all about just a nuclear Iran and protecting Israel, you're dead ass wrong. This has greater strategic implications across the Middle East and for the United States of America. All right. This doesn't just affect Iran. This doesn't just affect Israel. This affects trade over inside of the EU. This also affects the war efforts over inside of Ukraine. So this has a very broad implication when we look at this, and the amount of freaking terrain the U.S. is holding on to and our ability to project ourselves across the Middle East is unsurpassed. You are not going to find a better way in order to make it happen. Now, I bring all this up for a reason. I'll end up finding this right over here. I can't believe I actually ended up not seeing this. I know I've been telling you guys about how Russia ties into Iran and how Russia was pissed when the U.S. announced it was going to start doing its bombing campaign. Yeah, I think we'll be conducting a special military campaign, right, against the Houthis and against Hezbollah and against all of the different stupid proxy organizations over in the Middle East and against the IRGC. We'll call it a special military campaign. I like that. Who said that? Sinner? Hell yeah, Sinner. That is a great freaking way. I ended up sharing this today over on X. And I want you guys to see this. This ended up coming out not that long ago. I believe the U.S. government, April 2nd, put this out, and somehow I missed this. That is a very real headline from the U.S. Department of Treasury. Treasury sanctions Houthi network procuring weapons commodities from Russia. That came out on April 2nd. Somehow I missed it. I don't know. It just happens sometimes. Flow of weapons, the way it was working was they were taking weapons and procuring them from Iran. So everybody knows the Houthis are getting their weapons from Iran. But Iran was procuring those weapon systems from Russia. And then they take them and they'd ship them down to the Houthis and get them in that way. And that actually makes sense now that we know Iran is procuring weapons from Russia. Why we saw so many of them, Russian weapon systems, on the front lines over inside of southern Lebanon. So the real question is what is Russia getting out of all of this, and why is Russia so pissed off? Well, we're going after the supply networks. Nate Vance actually went down in my comment section today, and he had commented, amateurs talk about like tactics in battle, and professionals talk about logistics. And right here, what we're going over, this is logistics. This is us targeting logistical supply routes for the Houthis, for Iran, and also for Russia. And so when we look at the Middle East, you have to keep that in mind. It's not just about what the United States is about to do to Iran, but it's also about what is going to actually impact Russia and the Ukrainian battlefield as well. This is a very significant buildup. Like, this is just what we have over there as is. But when we start talking about the amount of freaking C5s and everything going in the area, that's a very big deal. Additionally, it looks like over a dozen, I tried telling you guys this, it's a dozen C5Ms and C17s have arrived in the region in the last 24 hours. So it's over a dozen C5s, over a dozen C17s have been scattered across the Middle East, dropping off weapons and equipment and supplies. And one of the main things that they're putting out there is these suckers, the Patriots. I told you that, yes, they can carry, the C5s can carry freaking, 2 Abrams tanks. Like, obviously they can handle a freaking Patriot, right? And I think it's about half of our Patriot systems are now being deployed across the Middle East. That's a significant amount. So if you know somebody inside of the United States Army that's in a Patriot battery, they're likely deployed or on standby to do so. Why are we putting all of these across the Middle East? The CENTCOM area of responsibility. Why are we doing that? We're putting these out there because we're worried about Iran's retaliatory strikes or Iran striking ahead of time. I just showed you all of the array of assets of U.S. military across the Middle East, and we are moving these suckers in place. We moved an additional one, it looks like, over inside Israel like a couple days ago. And so not only are we protecting our own assets, but we're also worried about Israeli assets as well. And Israel's got their own freaking shit to throw up in the sky, David Sling, to go after all this other crap. The Eagle came in and commented. He said, establish the battlefield, Matt, is why. You are absolutely correct. All of this is establishing the United States battlefield across the Middle East. And we are not even beginning to scratch the surface. This is just open source information that we're able to go out, locate, and confirm and let you guys know is actually happening. So all of this is OSINT. What the U.S. military actually has in the region is a completely different story. A lot of people do not realize that we have just a strategic reserve inside of the Middle East for contingency operations. And that is a massive stockpile of weapons over there. And I know exactly where it's at. It's huge. And it's pretty easy to distribute and get out there. I talked to you guys about Bagram Airfield and the rumors coming out, and it was based off of one report, and then it ended up hitting several other ones, and then several other agencies ended up coming out and reporting on it about the U.S. Moving into Bagram Airfield over inside of Afghanistan. Now, that would be extremely important if that was true. If it was true, it would be very, very important. Give me one sec here. And I'm going to explain to you why. Why it would be actually really, really important for us to do that. Not that we don't have the capabilities to strike Iran where we want, but Let's look at the freaking map. Bagram Airfield is just north of Kabul. It's like right about here, like on the map. So here's Kabul, here's Afghanistan, right? Here's Kabul. So Bagram Airfield is somewhere around here if we were to go in. There it is, Bagram. Bam, nailed it. So there's Bagram, okay? Just north of Kabul, right here, this green dot. Now, Iran, all the way over in the eastern side of their country, over at Mashhad, all right, they have an airfield that's out here. And this is home to the IRGC's freaking Air Force headquarters, all the way over at Mashhad. There's a freaking airfield out there. And the reason that's a big deal is because if you look at where it's located, it's all the way tucked away in the freaking northeast corner, far, far away from everything else. So all of our freaking assets that are right across the Middle East are all the way over here. Now, we do have things like cruise missiles and all sorts of crap that we'd be able to fire and get kind of over there, right? We do have assets like that that exist. But you picture it's all the way up over here, and when you look at the Middle East and where we're kind of arrayed around it, we would have to basically fly across the entire country of Iran, and that puts our service members at risk. Even if we were to come up through Pakistan and over Afghanistan, maybe then we could bomb them and get the hell out of there. That's fine, but then we got to tell Pakistan about it, and then we're worried about Iran doing it. Kind of a problem. But if we stage over inside of Afghanistan, we could literally just bomb that sucker from the frickin' border and not even cross into Iranian airspace. So it would be a big deal if that was actually true. It would be a huge deal if that was actually true. That target over there, the IRGC Air Force headquarters, it'd be freaking huge. But the spokesperson for the Taliban did come out, and I call it the Taliban still, not the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, whatever. The spokesperson for the Taliban did come out and state that those reports were false. But inside the initial report, they're saying several eyewitnesses have seen the C-17 land over there and that equipment get off. But I'll tell you, in that same report, they ended up saying that the deputy director of the CIA was on the ground there. I find that extremely hard to believe. Incog Faraday coming in, gifting out 5 Speak the Truth memberships. Greatly appreciate you, brother. Here's your overhead imagery of that location. This came in on March 31st is the first one that you guys can see. All right, this is up-to-date imagery. This is freaking up-to-date imagery of the Bagram Airfield. And that airfield itself is completely and totally clear. There is no U.S. aircraft on it. None. Not a one. Skip it forward. I want to say this one's going to be the 5th. Yes, this is April 5th. Same thing. There is no movement across that airfield. There is no sign of U.S. aircraft. Now, these are just a snapshot. It is possible that the U.S. had landed C-17s and offloaded equipment and everything else, but we would not just leave people on the ground without an ability to exfil. That wouldn't make any sense at all. Nor would we end up landing them down at Hamid Karzai International Airport, or whatever the hell they're calling it these days, Kabul, and leave those planes down there. It's possible, I suppose. But the big issue with that is all of the foreign intelligence service, namely Iran, that is over inside of Kabul. For those that don't know, it'd be a short flight to get from Kabul up to Bagram. It'd take like freaking 5 minutes to get there, right? In a helicopter, it's like 20. It would take like 5 minutes to fly up there in an airplane and land, right? However, the problem is those aircraft being spotted by Iranian intelligence officials that are on the ground inside of Kabul. So we couldn't have them there if we didn't want Iran to know what was going on. So the likely course of action would be to continue to keep them staged at Bagram Airfield. However, I say however, it's not outside the realm of possibilities that because we want to do all of these things, we would end up moving all that crap in. Like we go over, assess on the ground, yep, runway, everything's still good to go. Drop off some equipment and shit and tell the Taliban don't screw with it and hope it stays there, and just leave a couple freaking spooks behind to guard our own stuff. And then go land in, pick it up and go. It's possible. Is it probable? No. I would think we would need like an enduring presence over there, personally. Uh-oh. That's funny. It doesn't like my freaking VPN that I ended up using. So we'll put it this way. Let me go back over here. The website that I wanted to open up for you guys ended up going down. There is something that I want to show you. We're going to go from, let me get this map up. We're going to go from talking about the striking of Iran, and something that is also developing over in the Middle East right now. And all of that is developing, again, over in the Sinai Peninsula, right outside of Israel, right outside of the Gaza Strip. Yesterday, prior to Trump and Netanyahu having the press conference and meeting, the French President Macron, along with the Egyptian president and the Jordanian king, ended up having a meeting and talking about wanting to have ceasefires in Gaza. They did. And for some reason, all right, Trump's meeting with Netanyahu got delayed. Like they were supposed to have the press conference and they ended up, the White House, I was watching the freaking website, White House ended up canceling it. And then we ended up seeing numerous reports across mainstream media outlets saying that the White House had canceled the press briefing or the press conference, saying it was off. And then out of the blue, like an hour, hour and a half later, they just keyed it up. And that's when I went live yesterday. So what the hell is going on? Well, right over inside of the Gaza Strip, and it's what, 50 kilometers. I think it's like right about there. So there's 50 miles. We'll go down to 30 miles. 50 kilometers, about 30 miles. What's down over in this region? I forget the name of this freaking port. There's a port right over here. Arish, maybe is where it's at. I forget. But there's a port right over here. And this is where the French president today over in the Middle East was visiting. And he was over there because that's where a lot of the humanitarian aid and assistance gets shipped into Gaza from. Because right now, what he's calling for, Macron, is he is calling for a reopening of the border crossings. And the rumor is that Israel may very possibly reopen border crossings. And what they'll end up doing is taking private security contractors or private military contractors, PMCs, establishing a safe zone for the Gazan civilians, and then move them in there and then allow the humanitarian aid to get into there, because that makes sense. And there is an establishment of a new corridor that Israel did, and that would make sense as well. It's just north of Khan Yunis. I forget what they're calling this damn thing, but just north of Khan Yunis. It's like basically cutting across right here. They're establishing a new corridor, kind of like they did the Netzarim corridor up in the north, right? So if they actually did do that and they establish it and they have that corridor that's in there and they're able to cut off Rafah, and they're able to start moving civilians down into Rafah, and they're able to actually keep Hamas out of there, well, then all of the civilians that are inside of Gaza would be able to go down inside that humanitarian aid sector and be able to get humanitarian aid, and it'll actually be controlled. Bag of wheat went from like, I think $40 up to like 80 or something ridiculous, like $35 up to like $80 after Israel like closed everything back off. Matt, a piece of Muhammad here, and their same thing. Let me see here. We've got questions I need to get to answering. Matt Borgeson, can you explain to me why so many Americans are anti-support for Ukraine, but when it comes to U.S. doing the same thing for Israel and war, it's okay? Yeah, Matt, I got you on that one, buddy. Let me see what your next question is. Maybe it's the same one. This administration gave us promises of peace in America first, yet we're preparing to bomb Iran. I don't know, it just comes off funny. Yeah, so let's explain that, Matt. So when it comes to support for Ukraine, one of the biggest issues that I have noticed when it came to support for Ukraine is that a lot of the Americans are buying into Russian propaganda about Ukraine. For example, let me get this up. I did an entire write-up on this the other day. I went over this. There is an article that came out inside of The Hill that people like were losing their shit about, because The Hill is like extremely left-leaning to the best of my knowledge. I don't know. I really don't follow that type of crap, but The Hill is extremely left-leaning, right? And it said, sadly, Trump is right on Ukraine. And what he's referring to, all right, as he gets into it and he starts going through it, is he starts referencing a bunch of bullshit, BS Russian propaganda, right? One of the first things that he ends up getting into, all right, and this is his article. If you guys want this again, it's up over on my freaking Twitter. You guys need to go over and give this sucker a look. Is he opens up this portion of it. All right, so sadly, Trump is right on Ukraine. He's got some crap from Vlad up there, everything else. And what he's talking about is how Ukraine, and this is the one thing that he got right, Ukraine bears responsibility essentially, for the frickin', I need to put damn ad blocker on this thing. Ukraine bears responsibility, along with the United States of America, for the outbreak of war over in Ukraine. Holy crap, did that guy get everything wrong. I ended up taking all this stuff and frickin' broke it down because Americans, what they don't get, what Americans don't understand is the history of Ukraine and the history of Russia, the collapse of the Soviet Union, the breaking off of Ukraine, Ukraine surrendering its nuclear weapons for the Budapest Memorandum so that they could get, it's not security guarantees, you were wrong there. If that's what you think the Budapest Memorandum was about. It's not security guarantees, just the promises that everybody's going to respect their sovereignty and political sovereignty. When Ukraine overthrew, all right, the leadership in 2014, it wasn't because they were pissed off at Vlad starting in 2014. Yanukovych, the president from 2014, that was the current president in 2014 that was allegedly democratically elected, got caught cheating in a damn election in 2004. And Putin was influence peddling during the election in 2004. We ended up they ended up revoting after he got caught cheating. And all of this is well documented. They ended up revoting until he gets in 2010 when a new presidential election takes place. Yanukovych runs again. This time the international community goes in order to govern it, or like observe and see what's going on inside of that election. His political opponent following the election actually ended up getting jailed at the end of that year. Wrap your head around that one. And Putin was backing him the entire time. This is ENMO, European Network of Election Monitoring Organizations. They are the ones that ended up getting brought into the Ukrainian election in 2010. And what they ended up saying back then was basically overall evaluation of counting, very bad, bad and very bad evaluation due to negligence and fraud. But I ended up taking this document and ended up just ripping all the data out and putting it into here. Now, all of this entire report that Enmo did, this whole report that I have up over on your screen, and it's all referenced over there. You guys can go find it underneath that article that I wrote up over on X. Ukraine presidential election final report. All of this stuff took place, what's highlighted on your screen right now. Destroying ballots, ballots being removed from polling stations, ballot stuffing, bribery, vote buying, closed-door Central Election Committee decision-making unobserved. They didn't let the frickin' observers go in there. Inconsistent instructions from the Central Election Committee for voters list update to mobile voting requirements. Observers being denied entering the polling stations. Observers being denied oversight of vote counting and tabulation. District election commissions temporarily or partial shutdowns during tabulation process. How about that one? Intimidation of observers and more. All of that stuff was documented during Yanukovych's freaking election, but that report wasn't finalized until after he ended up getting into office. And so when he went and he started heading towards more pro-Russian agenda inside of Ukraine, Ukrainians already saw this president corrupt as hell in 2004, cheat the election, and then get freaking kicked out. His election was overturned because of fraud that the international community flat out called him on. In 2010, they didn't allow the observers to do their job. The report wasn't finalized until he was in office. And then you get all of this crap that was taking place. And again, he's backed by Vladimir Putin. And he starts voting to go more pro-Russia. And so in November of 2013, they started rioting, or not even rioting, protesting. And all of those protests gradually got more violent and more violent and more violent until February. And the reason they got more violent is because the Ukrainian police that were working for Yanukovych were going out and freaking beating the hell out of the protesters, kidnapping him, taking him back, questioning him, beating the brakes off of him. And all of this is documented. Dragging him off into the cold while they're beaten, bloody, and leaving them for death. And those officers have been getting punished. Eventually, people start getting shot, and that's when it gets freaking real. And articles like The Hill did over here, this op-ed, this is what Americans are reading. So when you talk about why is it that Americans don't have support for Ukraine, it's because of where they're getting their information from. They're getting it from places like this. Steve V says, whenever you get a chance, I always wanted to ask what your favorite helicopter gunship is, being an SF guy, an Apache, a Cobra, or the Hind. Okay. I like Apaches. I do. Like, anybody that doesn't appreciate an Apache and their standoff distance and freaking like the capabilities the Apache carries with it, I don't know what to tell you. Apache was designed to go after tanks, right? And I love that helicopter to death. But I'm going to be honest, the helicopter I wish they didn't get rid of was a Kiowa Warrior. That was my favorite freaking helicopter. It didn't have a lot of boom boom, but they were small, they were maneuverable, they carried enough to get the damn job done when it came to like close combat aviation, or CCA. So there's CCA, which is helicopters coming in to give air support to troops on the ground, and then there's CAS, close air support, which is fast movers giving, or freaking, bombers giving support to troops on the ground. The CCA capabilities of the Kiowa Warrior, in my opinion, dude, unsurpassed. And we got rid of that damn thing. It pissed me off so bad. I love that helicopter. And those pilots were bad, bad, bad. Those dudes would take their M4s and throw them up on the dash and then load their freaking kits down. And they would literally pull a Tim Kennedy and take bags of frags with them. And after they Winchestered all of their ammo, they would still fly overhead and freaking like hang out the door and just crank off freaking rounds at dudes on the ground and chuck grenades out the helicopters. But they didn't keep them in the back of a Humvee. They were literally flying with them and just chucking them down on enemy positions. That's what the pilots, the Kiowas, would do. I love those damn things. But now I love me an Apache. I do love Apaches. They're cool. They're fun. They do that. All right, so let's get back to the Middle East and what my big problem is over there right now, which for some reason this news agency is not letting me get up there, but I had another source to cite on it. Over inside of, so to bring you guys back, we were talking about, Russia, Ukraine, and all that other crap. So I hope I was able to answer your question, bud, on why Americans don't have full support for Ukraine. They don't understand the situation on the ground in there, and they don't understand the FSB. When the Soviet Union ended up collapsing, it's not like all the FSB agents packed up and went home. They just stayed inside of Ukraine. Well, they were KGB, right? They just ended up staying inside Ukraine, and so did their networks and everybody else. And a lot of the corruption that you see over inside of Ukraine actually isn't corruption, it's FSB interference. And we're talking about like troops being moved to different locations on the battlefield. We're about like poor orders being given. We're talking about all of that crap. And if you don't believe me that like the FSB is that bad, again, this is linked in that article. I wanted to show you guys something else, but now I'm getting off on the freaking like Ukrainian bullshit. Like when it goes down to corruption. Look at this. Oh, hold on. That's not the right one. Oh, man, they got rid of the freaking article. I had it cited in here. Maybe it's this one. Here we go. Ukraine uncovers high-ranking FSB mole inside of its top spy agency, the SBU, or the SBU, whatever you want to call it. They ended up pulling, no bullshit, an FSB freaking spy out of the very freaking top. And this occurred on February 12th of this year. So the FSB is very much ingrained over inside of Ukraine. Very much ingrained over inside of Ukraine. And when you hear about corruption and money not making it where it goes, or supplies not making it to where it goes, a lot of that is the Russian interference via foreign intelligence, right? Going in and changing things so that the troops on the front aren't getting the supplies that they need. I've seen my own friends that are doing good work going after corruption inside of Ukraine, where they end up getting cut orders to go to the front line in order to get killed. That's the type of crap that the FSB does over inside of Ukraine. And so that is the corruption that they're speaking about. When you hear about the Nord Stream 2 pipeline being blown up, and then all of a sudden it's a guy with a Ukrainian passport, just because he has a Ukrainian passport doesn't mean Ukraine did that. What that means is that that guy with the Ukrainian passport likely was getting paid for by Russia to go and blow that shit up to try to pin this crap on Ukraine. I hope that makes sense. Same thing when we had it, like all of this crap is their best. They're doing their best effort to get the West to lose support for Ukraine. And a lot of people are buying into this crap. Why the US government hasn't released all of the data on these types of things is beyond me. And I really wish they would, because if they would do that, it would solve a hell of a lot of problems. But unfortunately, they haven't yet. They will. I think it'll just take some time. And I think what's going to end up happen is it's going to be one of those moments where like Vlad screws around and then eventually he ends up finding out. This is what I wanted to show you guys. Over inside the Sinai Peninsula outside of Gaza, right? So we're talking about, we're talking about the Gaza Strip right over here. And we're talking about the Sinai Peninsula. And we were talking about Macron being over here in this region yesterday, right? Like going and visiting the ports for the humanitarian aid. So humanitarian aid's been shut off inside of Gaza for a while because that's how they're smuggling in supplies and equipment, everything that's going into there. That's where it's all coming from. And so now, early reports coming out of the Sinai Peninsula, controlled by Egypt, on top of the tank buildup and everything else, is you have 10,000 plus Egyptians that are rallying in the Sinai Peninsula that are allegedly going to be on their way over the border inside Gaza. I did find a newspaper article on this crap, which was right here, that you can't see because of the country for whatever that my VPN's in. All right. I had that newspaper article on it. And then I saw some independent reporting from some people on the ground. Over 10,000. And allegedly, what they're saying is that the Egyptian military is okay with this stuff. The Egyptian military is allowing it. And they're going to allow them to push up over into the Rafah border crossing with full permission to basically try to invade Rafah to open up the frickin' border crossing. Now, I, for the life of me, can't possibly see that going very well. Nor can I see Israel allowing that either, because they have troops that are currently locking down the Philadelphia corridor, which would be the Rafah border crossing or the border with Egypt, Gaza/Israel. So if all of these people end up making it down there and they go right on that frickin' border and they go to try to open that sucker up, that's not going to be good. That's not going to be good at all. If these civilians end up getting shot, if they end up freaking going over across, like none of it's going to be good. And so word on the street out of Israel right now, because again, you ended up having, how do I want to say this? You ended up having all three of those heads, right? Jordan, Egypt, and Macron from France coming out saying, hey, we need to resume humanitarian operations. We need a ceasefire to make all this stuff happen. Now, Times of Israel is coming out and reporting today, or yesterday actually, that they are going to resume aid inside of Rafah, inside of Gaza, that they're going to somehow turn aid back on, that they have all of these different plans and all of these different ways to make it happen. So all of this pressure that's been building up. Now, what they're saying, okay, is that the government of Israel is denying that this is going to happen, but they have military officials that have heard that this is going on. They're independent sources saying that they're going to end up turning aid back on. Reason they're going to end up turning all of this aid back on is likely because of all of that mounting international pressure and the fact that it looks like there's like 10,000 Egyptians that are about to march over on freaking Rafah. Not to mention the Egyptian military that's built up. So now it becomes perfectly clear why Egypt has built up a massive freaking force over inside the Sinai Peninsula. I talked to you guys about it last week. Egypt had moved in a buttload of armor over into the Sinai to the point where Israel was telling America, hey, you're supposed to be enforcing this peace treaty between us, and it's not going good. If 10,000 Egyptians decide it's going to be a good idea for them to attempt to reopen the frickin' border crossing and Israel opens fire on them, or there's some sort of an incident, then you can see your Egyptian troops trying to go in and protect their own people, right? It's kind of crazy when you think about it, that plan would be that simple for them to go in there and do something like that. Last night, I ended up telling you guys that Trump and Netanyahu were talking about everything. And Trump made a statement yesterday that absolutely blows my mind, in case you guys missed it. Trump literally made a statement during the meeting with Netanyahu, where he talked about U.S. taking control of the Gaza Strip and providing security for it, more or less an international peacekeeping force. And it came through when he was talking about how Gaza should be like the freedom zone or whatever the hell he wanted to call it. Right before he made the freedom zone statement, he talked about the U.S. providing security inside of Gaza, U.S. owning Gaza. He had made jokes about how it didn't work out good for Israel, giving up the frickin' land and giving it back to the Palestinians. That didn't work out. And so the French are calling for a two-state solution again. I just saw it this morning. I saw a headline, Macron wants a two-state solution. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen to the point that we had to have pissed them off. The French had an aircraft carrier that was over at the port of Djibouti yesterday that was helping out. And it set sail and it started moving north. It's out. It's gone. She gone. She's no longer helping. Now, that to me is a huge sign that all of this that's going to be taking place over in the Middle East over the next couple of days, coming weeks, whenever the hell it is that we decide to strike Iran, that all of this that's going to be taking place over there is going to be a unilateral operation, maybe with Israeli help, maybe with Israeli support. Fearmongers are coming out and saying that the meeting inside of Amman, Jordan, that's supposed to take place this weekend between the United States and Iran, the United States is actually considering backing off and letting them, like, basically trying to put some security, like, or some guarantees in place that's basically not disarming Iran. And that potentially it would also involve Israel giving up its nuclear weapons. For those that don't know, Israel may or may not have nuclear weapons. Right? But Israel's not threatening to nuke everybody. Iran is. And so people are highly concerned that in order to make peace, if Iran's going to give up its nukes, well, then so is Israel. But the problem is Israel would actually abide by like international weapons inspectors, the IAEA. They'd be disclosing everything. They'd be showing everything. Iran is in non-compliance of the NPT. So I don't see that happening. That to me doesn't pass the common sense test that the United States government would require Israel to give up their nukes while Tehran is allowed to continue on with what it's doing. And this is the biggest problem. And you guys got to think about this crap. If you're the commander in chief and you're sitting in there and you're getting all of these different intelligence reports that are coming in, and it's your job to make the decision. Somebody's got to make the crappy call at the end of the day, which may be right or it may be wrong. But Iran has a long history of lying to weapons inspectors. Iran has a long history of non-compliance with the NPT. Iran has hundreds of pounds of enriched uranium at 60%, at a minimum now. They likely have more than that and likely higher enriched. And there's earthquakes that took place over in Iran over the last 7 days that have massive spikes that definitely look like underground nuclear tests. And yesterday, Trump ended up calling Netanyahu into the freaking White House. And he showed up. And that's likely what they were talking about that was on their agenda. Yeah, Gaza and all this other BS moving forward, great. Freaking great. But Iran potentially having nuclear weapons capabilities now, that's an issue. Us moving up a meeting into Amman with Iran, great. This guy, man. This freaking guy. This journalist over inside of Gaza that ended up getting beat up by airstrikes, major piece of shit. I can show you a whole thread on it. Doesn't matter. He's a POS. Ended up killing a bunch of Israelis on October 7th. Ends up being a Hamas member. Ends up having like a burial for like, or I'm sorry. He's just a raging pile of garbage. I don't even feel like spending time on him. Now, the problem is also that we're going to have Steve Witkoff go in and do the negotiations over inside of Amman. And in my opinion, he's not the best freaking person that we need to have. We need to have somebody a little bit stronger. We need to have somebody that knows a little bit more about what they're doing. And I think it's going to turn into a thing. I told you guys last night that I'm going to do a chat and start taking questions over on Discord. That's 100% what I'm doing. So I'm pulling in there right now so that I can start hearing from you guys. So I'm diving in there right now. Currently pulling it up. So if you're a Speak the Truth member, if you are whatever, if you're a true supporter, get your butt over into the Discord, start jumping in there so that we can start taking questions from you guys and we can start having actual freaking discussions. Because all of this crap that we're talking about, and I mean all of it, is going to be a very, very big issue for the United States. A lot of people are worried about the tariffs and everything else that's going on around the world. A lot of people are paying attention to tariffs. A lot of people are saying that the tariffs this and tariffs that. Dude, I'm telling you right now, this is a much bigger deal than the tariffs. The tariffs are going to work themselves out. Stock market had a bit of a dip. That's fine. It's still pretty high, right? People are losing money. Not my problem. I'm not. But what is currently taking place? Oil, by the way, people are bitching about oil being under $60 a barrel. Absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, if you're a true supporter, you guys, I see you guys slowly creeping over here into the Discord. If you're a true supporter, dude, jump up, raise your hand. Let's talk about all these things. Let's try to get some clarity going on in these situations over there. All right. I want to hear from you. And if anybody is, oh, good, call sign Texas is still alive. I just seen him come in. I was like, if anybody's heard from Texas, let me know because I feel like that dude's dead. I'm glad he's alive. What's up, buddy?
What's up, man? Not dead. Definitely not dead. Just extremely busy. I'm actually on the road back from one part to the other part of Ukraine right now. So.
Oh, okay, good. I heard. Good, man. I heard Russia is starting to use more freaking cruise missiles and shit again. Like they're starting to come around. Not a lot of them, but a few.
It was on a very small scale. They did use, and it was mainly caliber cruise missiles, which is sea launched. So they were launched from the Caspian and the Black Sea.
Yep.
So it was not many KH-101, which is air launched, but they did use multiple ballistics as well, like Iskander and whatever else they're using ballistic wise. But yeah, they've been wreaking havoc. It's like every time they're getting hit somewhere, like legit targets, they get so mad that they start just bombing like hospitals and school playgrounds and just anything that they can to terrorize the people. It's really like that. You can see every time Ukraine does something successful in that direction, it literally the next day you have a response of just hammering civilians.
Yeah. Well, I think Putin's going to be a little bit upset. He's going to start getting a little bit desperate. And hopefully the effects actually start coming out on the battlefield. Like once this whole thing's over, we start seeing it. And yeah.
I mean, on the battlefield, we see it. Just this week, it was Saturday morning, like a bright early morning, like 6:30, 7 o'clock on sunrise. Russia launched a massive push again in the east, near Andrivka, which is like that sector by like Donetsk, where Bakhmut, Chasiv Yar, and all that stuff. So they launched a big assault. Yep. But like the Ukrainians, we were just sitting and watching, and pretty much absolutely hammered them. Absolutely hammered them with their assault. 2 full platoons were taken out. Only 2 armored vehicles out of both of them actually returned and like turned around and boogied back towards the Russian positions. But they lost massively, like on that push. They didn't even make it a full kilometer from where their assault point started, where they got hammered. And the videos are actually out. So it's like they do like a massive like final push. Like they gather a lot of troops in a specific area. They do a push and it fails. The next day, what they do is they just start hammering. Like that restaurant, they claim that there was like 87 officers and NATO advisors over there. First off, if NATO advisors come meet anybody here, it's not going to be in a restaurant in 25 kilometers behind the front. And number 2, Ukraine did the smartest thing they were able to do is release the actual CCTV footage from inside the restaurant and from outside the restaurant at the time of the hit. And it's just regular civilians eating and sitting around. There's not even military people there. So
did you see the reports of the Chinese soldiers that Zelensky put out?
the reports of what?
Chinese soldiers. So Zelensky.
So I did see that, and what's surprising to me is, I don't know if you know, but there's Chinese soldiers that are actually working in the Legion as well. I mean, they're not Chinese soldiers; they're Chinese citizens that work in the Ukrainian Legion.
Okay.
But yes, there are reports of Chinese people, you can't say that Chinese soldiers, that are taking part in certain aspects of battlefield in smaller groups to gain combat experience is one thing that they're saying, but officially they're not like Chinese soldiers. They're more like Chinese citizens that joined the Russian army, because China's never going to say, yes, we sent some of our soldiers, we early retired them so they can go and join the Russian army. They're never going to say that. But we know what China does. China is going to put a finger in and watch everybody. They're going to put a finger on both sides. They secretly provide Russia with a lot of technical stuff that they need, as far as like the drones and like the tech that stuff needs. And then at the same time they come in and they say, oh, maybe they feel like China can be a big part of the peacekeeping thing. So, like, in my eyes, I wouldn't trust a Chinese government official with I don't know, they say 10-foot pole, I would make it a 10-mile stretch. I wouldn't trust either way.
So
they're known to just like have patience.
I look at this like dude, and all I think is like PMC or somebody that's like signing up to come play. And the other part of it is like you do have a lot of like different ethnicities across Russia because it spans that entire freaking region. And so you do have people that look like that over inside Russia. And it's one of those things where it's like, I need to see an ID card. You know what I mean? Like if you showed me like an official ID on the guy.
It wasn't really the ID card thing. To me, it was more the fact that they were writing in Chinese on the whiteboard of the building in the video, and they were also speaking fluently Chinese. So that doesn't mean anything, because we know how well propaganda videos can be staged and made. But yes, like you said, as long as there's not like a verification of a prisoner with an identification or a real intel, that somebody that's a source on the ground that can confirm that physically,
exactly,
it's all gonna be, to me, up in the air.
Yeah. All right. Trying to bring Death Rides up along with Rustinator and Nate. Get these guys up in the chat to go over a thing or two.
Yeah,
oh, there it is. There's Death Rides. What you got, brother? Death Rides. Can you hear me? No, you cannot.
Okay, here we go.
There he is.
All right. Sorry about that. I want to talk about gas and diesel and jet fuel. We know Biden drained our reserves as part of his sabotage. And I'm wondering where we're at with the fuel reserves, and also why, I don't know if it should be the U.S. military or whatever, but why on earth can we not process American drilled oil? We send our oil to other countries to be processed and shipped back to us. And then we get oil from other countries shipped to us to process in the Houston area. Like, why on earth do we not have a refinery that can process West Texas sour? It's insane to me, and I'm a little concerned about it, because we know the first thing Iran's going to do is close the Straits of Hormuz if they can, if we bomb them. So where are we at with gas?
All right, so let me grab this, and I'll put the fact sheet up over here, because you're worried about our strategic oil reserve. So let me throw this up, because I had to start pulling this stuff. I know where to get it from. It just takes me a second. And then as far as where we're at, like over time, is kind of the question, right? Because last I checked, I think our strategic oil reserve under Biden had dropped to like 20% of our actual capacity. So let me get this stuff up on the screen because it's a very good question, especially when it ends up coming into war.
Yeah, I mean,
so we're building it back up a little bit more. And this one, I'll reference this article. Let me get it up over here, and then we'll bounce it off the current facts that they have up over there to judge whether or not this article is correct. So give me 1 sec so I can put this up on the screen for you. But it's one of those things where, like I said, under Biden, it dropped really freaking low. It really did. And why he wasn't refilling the stuff is beyond me. So right up here on the screen right now, this just came from literally, you can see it up top, like the Department of Energy.gov. And this is our current inventory as of April 4th, 2025. And you see where it says 396 million. Okay. Where we're sitting at. Yep. I'm not familiar with the sweet versus sour and all other shit. Maybe like crude versus freaking refined. I have no idea. But you can see all of the freaking movement and everything as it goes down. So 396 million. This article that I'm putting up right over here is actually by Reuters, which ends up bringing up take 20 billion a year to refill the oil reserve. This ended up coming out on the 7th of March, so about 30 days stale. And then they go down and they talk about where we're currently sitting at, which is 395 million barrels of oil. And we go back over here and we check it. So here we're at 396. So we are moving up quite a bit. But that's where we were at. If we were to go back to, I think 2022 is when it was at its lowest. So we're about what? I'd have to do the math, right? I'd have to do the math. Our capacity is 727 and we're almost at 400. So we're now up above 40 to 50%.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're over 50%. Right. So we're on our way back up.
Hey Matt.
And
yeah. Whoever that was.
Hey, this is Nate. I worked in the oil and gas industry for pretty much my entire adult life until I decided to go on a
hunting trip,
shooting vacation. Yeah. But yeah, first of all, we do refine our own Texas oil, right? The problem is just that we drill more of it than we can refine. So we do ship large amounts of it overseas to get refined and then buy back the refined product. But that is not to say that we don't refine our own oil. I mean, I know that the wells that we drilled and completed, I would hook those wells up to pipelines that went directly to refineries in Texas. That's what makes us so much more efficient than a lot of places in the world.
Awesome.
And then we just built a new refinery in South Texas, just south of San Antonio, here very recently. So it's a brand new refinery.
Okay.
I think that happened during Trump's first term, but there was a problem with like the green people that will not allow us to like build new refineries, right? They make it really difficult. So the regulations required make it almost not profitable enough to build new ones. So that is a very important thing that needs to be fixed, is we need to update our refining capacity to be able to refine every drop of oil that we produce.
Yeah, it's my understanding that we just don't have the ability to refine it all. But
not all of it, right? But if in the case of a war, we would be able to more than supply our own military without having to, you know what I mean? Like if it came down to shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, our military would be absolutely supplied with a fraction of what is just drilled in Texas, right? Texas has actually produced more oil than Saudi Arabia here recently. So that should tell you how much oil that we have, and we haven't tapped into anywhere near what we could if we needed to.
Yeah, it's insane. When I was doing like leadership classes and things like that, I got in with the oil industry. And one of the things that I was like amazed to hear was the amount of freaking oil that the United States has underneath its soil if we're actually allowed to tap into it. They say that there's enough basically to last us indefinitely if we were actually allowed to drill it.
Yeah, I don't know about indefinitely, but you know what I mean? Indefinitely is
extended period
a never-ending term. But Jesus Christ, yeah, like way beyond, we'll all be gone before that oil is, right? Like everybody listening to this will be long gone before that oil runs out.
Yeah.
There's a shit ton of it down there. And yeah, we haven't tapped into hardly a fraction of it yet.
Well, that's good. That's good. Russell, what you got, bud?
That sounds like
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
So quick question. If we do you think that we might do a like busters on Iran's nuclear facilities if they are underground?
Yeah, so it would be a series of blasts because we don't have anything that's going to penetrate as deep as we need them to, right? But what we do have is multiple aircraft capable of, you know, holding multiple munitions. And so it would just be a succession of bombs that are just falling, basically blasting a hole and then having another one drill on top of it, and blasting a hole and then having another one drill on top of it until we end up getting on top. So we have that capability.
Okay, yeah, because I asked my dad before, I think like a couple of days ago, if we actually do go and attack Iran, do you think it'd be safe to do the nuclear thing? And he's like, oh yeah, most certainly, because basically that will wipe out their nuclear stuff, and they won't be able to build anything, right?
Well, yeah, I mean that's the idea.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, but I think it's going to be deeper than that. I think we're not just going to go in and take out these different nuke sites, because while we're at it, we need to make sure their ability to retaliate, which we don't know. Like, if we're going to be perfectly honest with ourselves, even with the best intelligence, even with like combined intelligence from other nations, trying to figure out what exactly Iran has on the ground and where exactly all of that stuff is being stored and where exactly all of these nuclear production facilities are at, is the real question, right? And so when it goes down to knocking them out, like if you're going to do this, you got to do it hard, not just a little bit. Like you got to keep the pressure on the whole time. It's like when you kick somebody and they fall down, you don't want them to get back up and punch you. So we need to sit there and we need to stomp on them until their skull's crushed in. And I think that's basically what you're seeing building up around the Middle East. And it's not just inside of Iran, to be perfectly clear. It's going to be outside of Iran's borders as well. Places like Iraq and Syria and Yemen and Lebanon.
Right. Okay, yeah, because people are asking me about, like, because when I go live on TikTok, they're like asking me why we should do this, and why do I support Israel, and then basically I'm just throwing out facts, and they don't want to listen. And there's, I think yesterday I was on a live last night, where it was like it was these army these military or these veterans. And I was like, Trump, Vance, and Hegseth are fixing the military, and they don't want to hear the truth. Basically, they just kept on blocking me, muting me, and then they just kicked me out. And the host blocked me, and I'm like, whatever. And then they were calling me Tweed. It's like QUWEEN. I do not know what that means. I'm guessing it's a new slang or something. And I'm like, you can call me all the names you want. It really doesn't hurt my pride. You can't cancel. Basically, I'm just saying, you can't cancel all of us.
Well,
but yeah, basically, I just wanted to see what was up with the Iran thing. And honestly, I think if we do another hostage agreement deal, I think the Houthi, or not the Houthis, Hamas is going to violate it in probably like 48 hours.
well, right. Yeah, they are. And the bad part about it, which is what I said, that if you know, we had those uprisings and stuff we currently still do have those uprisings taking place across Gaza. And if there's another peace deal or any hostage exchange, Hamas is going to demand that Israel withdraw all of its troops from the Gaza Strip again, which is a horrible idea. Because then all of those people that did that uprising, and for that reason alone, I don't think we're going to do it. Because if Israel was to pull out at that point, all of those people that are taking part in those uprisings, all of those people that are freaking leading those uprisings, they're all dead. Because now they have outed themselves, they've been identified, and like I said, Israel's got one shot to get this right, so that will never happen again. And you need that for that systematic change to occur over inside Gaza. You need those people to lead that charge. And if we abandon them, if the IDF and the United States of America pulls out and lets off the pressure, then those people are dead. So we can't.
Basically, what you're saying is, Israel and the United States need to keep on having their foot on Hamas's neck, or basically the gas, to pressure Hamas into like surrendering and just lay down their arms and just basically die.
No, we have the ability to pull out, and then like Israel's got the ability, excuse me, to pull out and then go back in and put the pressure right back on their neck. But killing Hamas or dismantling Hamas, the current armed members, is one thing. Changing the radical ideology inside of Gaza is an entirely different process. It's the difference between the physical terrain versus the human terrain battle. And in order to win against Hamas, you got to beat them on both battlefields, in the human terrain is the important one, right? And what I'm saying is that you will lose the human terrain battle. The human terrain battle will be lost if the IDF backs out of the Gaza Strip to get maybe the 20 hostages back out alive. Maybe, if they're lucky. Because all of those people that have currently risen up are going to get schwacked. And then nobody's doing it again. Nobody. And so for that reason alone, we shouldn't back out of Gaza. Like, there needs to, that constant pressure needs to remain in there.
Okay, yeah. Going back to what you said, that I think yesterday about the staging of the medical stuff. Yeah, dude. Honestly, I watched the video on your Twitter account. Dude, there were no medical bags at all. I'm like, really? Dude, this has to be staged, because there is no way, if you're a medic, you would have multiple, actually probably like maybe 10 bags, depends on like how many people there are, full of equipment. And my dad's a retired fire chief, so I know what I'm saying. And when he was on calls, he would bring there would be multiple trucks with multiple bags in combat too. So
right,
I think that was staged to get people to be like, oh, Israel's still doing so-called genocide, but really they're not.
Well, in my opinion, it's one of two things. Either it is, they went in order to cover up what that van full of freaking knuckleheads was actually doing, or it was staged so that they could release that video and be like, oh my God, look and see how evil Israel is. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
It's one or the other. And truthfully, I don't care which one. Either way, they're freaking evil as hell. They
exactly.
really are.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I just like to pick your brain sometimes.
That's okay.
That's what I do with some veterans.
You're good, brother. I'm gonna let Nate jump in here because he's been sitting kind of quietly. He was able to back up, so I'm gonna let Nate jump in.
Yep.
All right.
Now, and I hate to kind of backtrack back to the oil thing, but it's something that even in 2022, when the war in Ukraine kind of broke out, is, the American oil industry is a weapon, and not just in the sense that oil, runs our airplanes and ships and all that stuff, but it's a weapon in the sense that most of our enemies, like if you look at Iran and Russia, for example, both of them, their economy is based on the sale of energy. We have the ability, our energy industry is so efficient that if we wanted to, we could just make the world awash in oil, and it would take a few months.
Sure.
The problem with it is once you make the world awash in oil, now those companies in the United States, it's difficult for them to make a profit. And part of the reason it's difficult to make a profit is because of a bunch of regulatory costs that the U.S. government imposes. Most of those are able to be erased via executive order, right? So if the current administration wanted to make it really difficult financially on both Iran and Russia at the same time while simultaneously benefiting our own economy, he could just incentivize those oil companies to just produce a shitload of crude oil, hit those guys in the pocketbook, because that's ultimately what drives. You can have all the desire in the world, but if you don't have the money to finance your war, it doesn't matter.
Correct.
Right? So you can be the most evil piece of shit in the world, but if you can't pay for it, you can't do anything. So if you can hit them in the pocketbook, you can damage them much more than a bomb can.
Yeah, I would agree.
You know what I mean? They still have to pay for this shit, and everybody thinks that they can just figure out a way to do it for free. It still costs them money. And
Yeah.
like, you know, some of the things when you talk about like sanctions and then being able to get around sanctions, well, you can't get around sanctions if you can't buy the products you're not supposed to have anyway.
Correct.
Because you can't
or if
afford them.
or if the product that you're producing is at such a low price now that it's not going to do your freaking country any good, you know? Because
Correct.
even China, like going to buy oil, is going to look at that and be like, "What? Why? Why would we pay this price to
Yeah,
Russia?"
like why would you buy black market oil if you can get it from the United States with a more secure supply line for less money?
Yeah,
It doesn't
it'd
make
be a
any
hell of a lot
sense.
cheaper.
Exactly. It'd be cheaper and it'd be more consistent because you don't have to worry about ships, you know, ghost ships getting seized or not showing up or, you know, all of that inconsistencies there. But like, if you think about it, it's kind of a win-win because if you were able to kind of deregulate that, I'm not talking about complete deregulation because they do need some oversight in that industry, right? And like you look at Deepwater Horizon, you know, we don't want that shit going on. But some of the things that some of their fees and their, you know, and their tax rates are basically just punitive, right? Like they've been punitive because you got leftists want to go green, so they make it really hard for those oil companies to kind of exist.
Yeah.
And if you could deregulate the nonsense to an extent, the American oil industry would produce so much of that shit that Russia wouldn't be able to afford further aggression, and Iran would not either, right? It's really hard to pay a proxy group to go kill themselves when you don't have any fucking money. So I think that's kind of a weapon that like the Biden administration left off the table. I am hoping that the current administration learns the lesson from that and says it's easier to fight a war with money than it is with weapons, right? Like if you can do it financially, that's a much easier way to get through it, especially when it benefits you.
Yeah, and
so that would boost the American economy and damage our enemies, which is like win-win.
Yeah, I don't understand why we don't have more freaking like oil refineries here in the U.S. I understand the amount of regulations, how dangerous it is, and everything else, but those would also be like very good jobs, and we'd be able to ship out a hell of a lot of freaking oil from the United States over to places like what the hell is it crap that they use over inside of like the EU, like LPG or whatever. I mean, things like that. The US actually producing a buttload, and it's when you're
CNG,
there we go. And then
compressed natural gas.
That's other portions, and the other thing,
and that's what
when you're refining oil, don't you get like a million other products off of it as well? Like when you're going through the refining process.
Dude, if you've been to the hospital, right? If you've had a surgery, you'd probably be dead if it weren't for the petroleum industry, because most of the tools they use in a hospital, anything made out of plastic, came from oil. Anything. So if you go look at your car, your phone, your computer, all of that shit is the byproducts of petroleum refinement. Pretty much anything that's called a polymer came from oil and gas. So that's basically everything except for metal, wood, and leather.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, and that's exactly what we should have going on, right? Like we should, personally, I think we should be refining a hell of a lot more. We should be able to open up those freaking regulations and get all that stuff up and moving, and it would make life a hell of a lot easier. We'd be able to affect the global market a little bit better, and Russia would be hurting just a little bit more. So would Iran. You know, I mean, it's just common sense.
Like the thing about it too is you can look at, and we've experienced this where we've had, like during Trump's first term, we were pulling oil out of the ground and making money at $40 a barrel, right? And profiting, right? Russia can't. Like Russia's break-even cost is about $50 a barrel. When you say break-even, it's because they have to take their oil, sell it, pay the guys that drilled for the oil, but then that's also how they pay for their army. That's also how they pay for their roads. That's also how they pay for everything, right? In the U.S., it's just like it's private industry. It's not a government industry, so it just has to make the companies who drill it money. And then after that, now you got everybody who's driving around in their cars has more money to spend. But if you put Russia, you know, where they're below their break-even cost, they're literally spending money to get oil out of the ground. They cannot continue to prosecute a war if, you know, for any length of time if that's the case.
Yeah, I would agree.
So it's early in the fucking administration. Same thing with Iran, right? Like they cannot continue. It's, you know, they will fucking hemorrhage money quickly.
Yeah.
So if you can drive it down to a low enough price where it's below their break even, they just start hemorrhaging money overnight. And we have deeper pockets anyway. But the difference is low oil prices benefit the United States economy, damages our enemies. I don't get why we don't use it as a weapon more often.
Yeah, I'd concur with that, man. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and
that's all I had to say.
I'm gonna go ahead and take a break. I'm going to be producing another video here, and hopefully YouTube turns back on the notification process. I don't know what the hell they're doing. Ended up winning one of my freaking copyright claims against Al Jazeera, but there's a smaller channel that's being a pain in my ass. And I don't know if it has to do with that or what's going on, but hopefully that ends up clearing up for everybody. At a minimum, you guys are going to see me at 9 p.m. tonight, and I'm going to look forward to getting another video cranked out today. And, you know, Nate, hopefully we're able to reconnect and touch more here in a little bit. Everybody on the show real quick. Let's see. We got everybody back over here. Let's just run a poll, Nate. How do you feel about a poll? Did I lose you? I lost Nate. So I'm going to run a poll. Because I got asked this question, and I have the ability here to do it in about a week to 2 weeks. I'm going to run a poll if you're up over on YouTube right now. I'm going to go ahead and start that poll. Nate asked me the other day whether or not it would be a good idea for him to come back and do another show. And so what we are looking at doing is a Nate Vance part 2 to go over a lot more of the crap that's going on over there and get a lot more. And it looks like we got a lot of people that are saying yes, 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 yes. So this one won't be as rushed. It'll be nice, clean audio. We'll have everything going on that's going to be like really nice and really crisp for you guys. We can be going over Ukraine. We can be going over a lot of geopolitics and things of that nature. Different things that he was able to see on the ground. Well, I don't want to speak for him with what he's going to be willing to come on, but doing a Nate Vance part 2 and actually maybe even get some insight for what he had, because he went up to the White House, met with the VP and the staff, and I think they had some really good talks. And so looking at doing a part 2 with Nate Vance, if you guys are interested in that, go ahead and go over in the comment section and vote. Right now, it looks like we have 85% of you guys that want Nate to come back on the show. So, yeah, that looks like it's going to be a thing. I think we're going to end up having to bring Nate back, ladies and gentlemen. That deal, set, match, done. So Nate, sir, I know you're probably still out there listening. We're going to end up bringing you back on. Texas, closing thoughts and statements, sir.
Not much. Just on the last topic that he touched on, whoever was speaking, I'm not sure about the why we don't use oil as like this weaponized oil to because we can benefit from it and at the same time use it to drain our enemies, because we have allies that also have oil. That's one of the biggest things that you could see. Even part of the leaked messages was that we make sure that we're not damaging Saudi refineries in the region, because we have allies that are real big allies to the United States, if we like it or not. And like, there's a lot of money involved in between these allies to not just like pump the prices down because we want to hurt Iran and Russia, but at the same time we'll hurt other allies too. That's just the thought on that one. But other than that, no, it's just another day, you know, another day we survive.
Another day, another dollar.
Yeah. I'll write you in a bit. I was going to chat with you about something else, but I'll write you in a bit.
Okay. And just for the people that are asking, I saw Matt, where's the new Discord link? So I'm going to take this and I'm going to go drop it over in the live stream chat, because I see people asking about the Discord link. If you're a true supporter, follow that link right there. You'll be able to see the new post I just put up with the Discord link. That way you guys can get over there. I'll go ahead and pin that up at the top of the freaking chat right now so that you guys have that and you're able to get up and go over there. We're going to go ahead and close out that poll. Nate Vance coming back for a part 2. We got 85% of the people saying absolutely bring his butt back. So that's what we're going to end up doing. We'll bring Nate Vance back for part 2. Texas, we'll chat here in a little bit. Okay. Everybody else, peace, love, happiness, and
Cheers.
God bless. Cheers, brother. Cheers, cheers, cheers.